Shifting manufacturing bases will become critical in the global economic overhaul caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. In times of uncertainty, businesses now prefer to secure sourcing from multiple non-traditional geographies. In such a scenario, which markets and industries stand to benefit? What will new age supply chains look like? In this session, business leaders will crack these key questions. Our speakers include Jim Cathey, Senior Vice President and President, Qualcomm.
Hello and welcome to the Global Townhall Virtual Summit by the Economic Times Business Vertical. We have Mr. Jim Cathey, who is president at Qualcomm, and he is joining us from the US in this segment of global supply chain in the post-COVID world. So we all know how this pandemic has impacted global businesses, especially in terms of supply chain, and electronics and handset segment wasn't immune. So to further discuss this, let's start this fireside chat with Jim. Jim, I want to start this chat by seeking your views on supply chain, especially in the handset and electronics industry. How do you see this pandemic and how it has impacted the industry? And are we coping up well with the situation right now?
First I want to thank you for the time and to be here and spend some time with you. And I sincerely hope that you and the viewers that you're all safe and your family and your friends are also safe. This has definitely been a trying, very trying and challenging pandemic. It also has created some amazing experiments globally. If you think about right now, we have a global experiment right now working from home. It has put an historical high on the number of eyes on the internet, and just that alone has created some significant deltas in how businesses need to adopt. In some ways, if you go back in history and look back to the Spanish flu, history has a way of repeating itself. And when the Spanish flu was in full swing, I believe the US penetration of phones in the home was around 35%. And it was interesting, when they had the phones in the home, they weren't sure what new businesses, what new services, what new business models would actually come about. And just having that phone in the home, only in 35% of the homes, immediately people started using that phone to call a store and arrange for pickup. Things that you are seeing today, we don't call it arrange for pickup, we call it contactless pickup or order for delivery, for example. Same thing, a phone back then was used for a wedding. Now you do a video conference for the wedding. So it's interesting. Phones were with us during the Spanish flu in 1918. It created new models, new ways to interact. And we're seeing some of those same things today, especially with this tremendous amount of increased eyes on the internet. Now, specific to what you mentioned, are the industries, are they adopting? I think everyone has adopted in a readily and a speedy fashion, at least what they're able to do in the short period of time. And I think that you're going to see that extend. You're going to see it extend to almost every industry. The technology industry, of course, benefits, payments, electronic payments. You might ask your family and friends, when's the last time you've made a payment with cash, currency, physical paper and coins? It's just not happening. E-commerce obviously benefits. It just expands from where it was. It already had a good base. Retail benefits with deliveries. Utilities. Most people don't think about utilities. Everyone's at home. Everyone's working from home. Everyone's learning from home. Well, if everyone's home, the power usage goes up, the water usage goes up, and the internet usage goes up, which drives homes to upgrade their internet capability or their bandwidth. Streaming, gaming, video platforms, they also benefit. There's a lot of benefits. It seems to almost touch every industry in some way.
Right. But did we do well in terms of coping up with the situation, in terms of ensuring supply chain, or have countries or industries started identifying alternatives to their existing supply chain in the world across industries? How do you look at the whole situation right now?
Yeah, so in the short term, everyone has to restudy and rebalance, correct? And when you look at supply chain, it starts off with, where's my source? My sourcing of components, my sourcing of modules, or just any part of that product. Then there's the manufacturing of it, and then there's the distribution and the delivery of it. And what you're seeing is, in some industries, it's faster than others, and some may take more time, but you're going to see a balancing regionally on where those three parts need to live. And actually what you're going to see is a challenge of just-in-time inventories. So just-in-time inventories may not actually be applicable anymore for some industries. They'll want to, for example, have ways to predict where there could have shortages if this were to repeat itself. And if they did have shortages, how much inventory do they need to have? Is it a 3-month? Is it 6 months? Is it 9 months? Is it just in the sourcing, or is it in the manufacturing, or maybe it's in the hub where the distribution needs to take place? The other is, and this is an area that gets to your point on how are we adapting, because you have more eyes on the internet. Now all of a sudden, more people are paying attention to what's online, social media, for example. And what that creates is the opportunity for microbursts in demand. Microbursts in demands either based on emotion or based on the right ad that just gets the right exposure. These type of microbursts in demand, they're not really truly forecastable. So I believe what you're going to see in the mid to longer term is relooking at the algorithms that will now take into place, they'll take into consideration what's happening in social media. You won't be able to adjust your entire supply chain as it relates to a microburst in demand, but you will be able to adjust that end part, which is the distribution. And all of it at some point will get either localized or regionalized to be able to manage all of this in some way.
Right. Are there countries which are trying to leverage from the situation, offering themselves as as a true alternative to the whole situation in terms of supply chain? Because we know that there are countries like China, Vietnam, Korea, Japan, Taiwan. These are the countries. But
Yeah.
are there new countries which you think could come up and then offer or play a larger role in terms of supply chain?
Yes, I do. I think you're going to see a diversification, the supply chain. It will naturally happen. It will need to happen. They won't all want to focus on one or two. It'll get distributed, not just the suppliers, but also the manufacturing. I'll come back to the same thing over and over. Where the sourcing is, where the manufacturing is, and where the distribution is, it will need to be diversified. And there are some countries that will actually play a bigger role as we move forward. And you mentioned some of them. I think you'll see Brazil play a role. I think you'll see Vietnam play a role. I think you'll see India play a role. And that'll be needed. You'll also see every country to some degree, they'll have to make changes, whether it be government mandates or not, just for their own essentials and self-reliance. If you take a piece of data that talks about gloves, masks, disinfectants, today, there are 5 countries, just 5 countries, China, Germany, Ireland, Switzerland, and the US, they account for roughly half of that supply. Just based on necessity alone and self-reliance, you're going to see that be adopted by a lot of countries. So to your point, Dinesh, you're right. There will be other countries that play a role on a bigger scale, but also every country will be impacted at some point for they can develop their own self-reliance for their essential needs. Whether it's mandated by the government or not, that's going to happen naturally.
Sure, sure. In India also now the government has made it public that 22 companies have applied for the various schemes that the government had introduced in the space of manufacturing, handsets, electronics, and components. And the likes of Foxconn, Pegatron, all the Apple suppliers, Samsung, local players. Do you think that the move is very timely and these schemes could really benefit the country, or maybe in terms of attracting global companies or bigger supply chain companies to come to India and then explore options in terms of their plans for the entire world?
Yes, actually, the PLI scheme, it's very timely. It's smart, it's timely. India's already been attracting manufacturing to relocate there. It's a question of how deep that manufacturing goes. So yes, I do believe you're going to see a lot more go to India. Basically, you have all the right ingredients. And I've said this before with you, but I think the last time you and I met was in, I want to say Barcelona, but I've said this before. India is unique. It has an enormous consumption market. You have a very large base of workers, over 500 million, for example. You have an incredibly technology savvy and technology hungry constituent base. I believe that India will get more of this diversification in manufacturing, but also supply chain management based on its position and its location and where it is geographically. The challenge is going to be how fast that manufacturing comes to India at a deeper level. So now you have, there's in the electronic space, there's not a deep level of manufacturing as it relates to the components, but there's already a deep level of manufacturing that comes to assembly and modules and final products. That's there. And then we're already seeing that online distribution has matured dramatically in India, way beyond even some countries. I think you're also going to see, because of this pandemic, you're also going to see changes to the brick and mortar and how they deal with their distribution. And I think India is a great spot going forward. I think you've highlighted that it'll be one of the countries, definitely one of the regions that'll benefit from this with more manufacturing. But the PLI scheme, the timing of that, very, very strategic, very smart.
Do you think that this is one area where the government should focus, or is it a possibility where the country can explore some sort of opportunities?
Whenever you're looking at industries, entire industries with a deepness of supply chain capabilities, you need to have all of it encompassed if at all possible. This needs to be more of a mid to longer term goal of the government or the businesses in India. Yes, the short answer is yes, Dinesh, but it's not simple and it's not a short term, oh, let's just turn it on today. In order to get that component manufacturing, depending on the industry, right, whether it's semiconductor, DRAMs or microprocessors, foundries, or even a flat panel manufacturing facility, it requires an extensive ecosystem to supply it, right? It's the water and the power and the roads and the gases and the materials. Those all need to be there. You do have some huge advantages, though, that'll help India accelerate that. One is it comes back to you have a large workforce. Two, you have low cost energy and you have ample supplies of water. Those are some of the basic ingredients to bring in those semiconductor industries. But now that next part, it takes more time to do that, and it should be part of the mid to long-term strategies going forward.
Could there be more challenges as well for countries looking at attracting those companies and supply chain parts to their to their market? Could there be some challenges as well?
There are always more challenges. But the one thing that helps with those challenges is, in many ways, you're going to see a lot of the same players bring their capabilities to India at some point when the infrastructure is there. That actually helps overcome a lot of the challenges that people don't anticipate, right? There'll be process technology know-how that comes with those types of partnerships. There'll be fab design, fab layout, utilization, management. They'll bring that as well. And that'll help get over a lot of the things that there are big learning curves.
Sure, sure. So let's switch to technology. Has the pandemic accelerated the speed at which we work on the technology or the adoption of certain technologies where Qualcomm as a company provides its solutions? What sort of change have you seen so far?
This big global experiment that I referenced in the beginning of our talk, this experiment about working from home, it is driving the need for connectivity and products that are connected at a rapid level. I think what you're going to see is connectivity, not just with phones, but also with computing and compute where you actually have modems as your connectivity, as well as Wi-Fi. That will be adopted and is being adopted at a rapid pace. You have to think about this. In this global experiment that we have, you literally have billions of people working from home. And when they do that, the first thing that happens is, well, it's not just the dad working from home, it's the mom working from home. And the children, they're also at home either live streaming or playing video games or learning at home. When this happens, the family all of a sudden learns that, hey, we're going to have a bigger bandwidth in this house. We don't have enough bandwidth. Then once they get the new bandwidth, they have to say, well, I need to look at my router. I'm not getting good coverage throughout the house. Then they have challenges with their network and they have to look at that. Eventually what this drives us to is 5G. So the biggest thing I think is going to drive even faster, 5G. And you and I have talked about this before. The adoption from 3G to 4G in some regions took 3, 4, 5 years. The adoption from 4G to 5G Those regions that took 3, 4, 5 years to adopt it, they're going to shift much faster to 5G. And this whole global experiment that we have, it's going to incentivize it even more for the following reasons. It's much easier to be connected if you have a laptop, for example, that's connected to cellular as opposed to Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi, it has its advantages as well. But if you can just open up the laptop, regardless of where you are, and it's already connected, and it's a very secure connection, this helps drive the adoption of the technology faster. So I guess the short answer to your question is anything that connects us electronically, especially in the telecommunications, it will definitely be driven at a much faster pace than we have anticipated prior.
Sure. And do you also see the need of 5G increasing when it comes to the enterprises? Because a lot of people are working from home while they want their factories to keep operating with lesser manpower. And for that, automation is required. And for automation, connectivity is also required. Do you think that 5G adoption will be accelerated in these times?
Exactly. You'll see it adopted and accelerated as it relates to private networks. You'll see it adopted and accelerated as it deals with employees working from home. The CIOs will want more security. They want more control over how data is getting to and being disseminated from those devices at home. And cellular connection is a very good way to do that. It simplifies the connectivity process and it gives them more security.
On that note, let's conclude this fireside chat. Thank you very much, Jim, for taking out time for this session and giving your views and discussing this very important topic of supply chain in the times of COVID. And thank you very much and goodbye.
I hope you've gained some insights from this session. We'll see you on the other side.